This 111-year-old family heirloom had been collecting dust until my clan asked me to bring it back to life. Today I'm going to show you how I gave it the glow up that it deserved. Hey guys, welcome back to my page. So let's look at this buffet in a little more detail before I go over what I did to transform it. So you can see a lot of stains on the top. There was a lot of discoloration. The finish had faded. There was veneer missing and cracked. The back had mildew on it. It was just in desperate need of attention. I believe it had been in storage for a long time. And this is a family heirloom that my client's mother wanted her to have. So the first thing that I wanted to do was to apply a chemical stripper. This is Clean Strip. It's my go-to stripper. It works like a charm 99% of the time. So I wanted to go over the entire thing with stripper for two reasons. I wanted to get rid of that old finish, and then I wanted to also see if I could get any of those stains out with the stripper. So I went ahead and applied it over the entire top. I like to start from the top and work my way down. After about 15 minutes, the stripper is ready to be removed. So I use a paint scraper and just scrape it off across the top into a box. Once the majority of that stripper is removed, sometimes I will add a little bit more on top, and then I will use a little scrub brush to go over and make sure I get all the little bits of finish off. After that, I grab a scrub brush and a bucket of water in order to clean off the remaining residue. I know it seems kind of crazy to use just water and a scrub brush to clean it off, but I promise you it works. Every now and then, especially if a piece has shellac on there, I'll have to go back over it with acetone, but almost always the water and scrub brush works. So just give it a try. I promise I'm not going to lead you wrong or lead you astray. All right, so like I said, I like to work from the top down. So now that the top is done, I'm going to start on one of the sides and then work my way around. So I'm just going to apply the stripper like I did before, let it sit and work, and then I'm going to scrape it off. A lot of people wonder how you know when the stripper's ready, but like you can see, I'm just putting a chip brush over it and it's easily removing the finish. So you'll know it's ready. There will be signs. So let me just go ahead and address this because I'm sure I will be getting comments down below, but I do realize I'm not wearing gloves while I'm using the chemical stripper, and that is a big no-no. I know this. Please forgive me. I was out of gloves and I just wanted to get this done, but I was being very conscientious of my skin and trying not to touch the actual chemicals. The next thing that I am going to do is very carefully remove the back and then the mirror on the top of this piece. So I have used stripper with mirrors in before. I prefer not to do that. It's just a lot messier and it's difficult to clean up. So I'm very carefully going to remove the back. This lady is very old, so I have to do this very slowly and very carefully. So one of the cool things about antiques is that there is almost always going to be a date stamped on the back of a mirror. Before even looking at the date, I had a general idea of how old I thought it was based on the style and wood used, and the back of the mirror confirmed it. We are looking at 1914. All right, so obviously the stains did not go away with the stripper, so I grabbed my Surf Prep sander and an 80 grit sanding screen, and very slowly and meticulously and methodically, all the things, went over all the stains. So it did take a little bit longer. And the thing about oak is that it is an open grain, and it is sometimes kind of a pain to sand and get stains out of. So I did this slowly, but it worked like a charm. Next, when I'm sanding, I'm going to tackle the curves using my Surf Prep sander again, but this time I'm using an oversized Pro Foam sanding pad, and it makes going over all of these curves and getting in all the nooks and crannies so much easier. If you do woodworking or cabinetry or furniture refinishing or restoration, I highly recommend getting yourself a Surf Prep sander. It is an investment, but it is one that you will not regret. It is going to make your life easier, especially with these Pro Foam pads. I'm telling you, it is amazing. There is no going back. All right, so I'm going to show y'all this fail because, you know, these things happen and it's a learning experience. So there is broken veneer that needed to be replaced on one of the edges. So what I'm doing here is using an iron to try and heat up the old glue under the veneer so that it will easily come off. However, it is not easily coming off. So once that was not working for me, what I did instead, and what I should have done to begin with, was to get a damp rag and then put the iron over the damp rag on the veneer, and that works so much better. So don't do this, use a damp rag instead. Once the old veneer was finally removed, I wanted to make sure the surface was prepped for the new veneer, so I grabbed my sander and sanded it smooth just to ensure easy application. Because the top of this buffet is bowed and warped a little bit, I bought a veneer that was quite a bit larger than, or wider than I needed. And I did this so that I could go cover the entire side, and I will just trim the top and the bottom so that I don't have to worry about trying to curve veneer, because that's not going to happen. And then the application process. So this is a pre-glued veneer. So all you really have to do is put it where you want it and then apply heat to it, and it's going to melt that glue. So kind of the reverse of removing it. Very similar, but instead of a damp rag, you're going to just use a rag because you don't want to scorch the wood. I've done it. It will happen. Make sure you put something between the veneer and your iron. And then what I do is I basically do it section by section very slowly so that I can make sure that it is fully glued on. I'll go back over it a few times just to make sure there's no bubbles in there, and I'll just work my way down. Once the veneer is on and secure, I take a little X-Acto knife and I just trim around the edges. So I leave a gap there because it's much easier to sand it down later instead of having to do the whole thing again. So I try and leave a gap, but just very slowly and carefully remove that excess. After it is trimmed, I take my sander with a 220 grit. You don't want to use anything too high. It's going to tear that veneer up. So I just use a 220 and I go very lightly over the edges so that I can make it smooth and flush with the surface. And look, you would never know that piece of veneer had been broken and missing. So this is more of a restoration process. So I am using the color Brown Mahogany by General Finishes in their water-based stain line. Water-based stain can be a little tricky to work with sometimes just because it dries so much faster than an oil-based stain. So what I like to do is use a water mister and I'll mist the surface. I don't want to get it too wet where it puddles because I want that stain to still soak in, but this is going to give me a longer work time so that the stain doesn't dry out too fast. I do try and apply it quickly, but you don't want to go too quick because then you're going to make a mess. Now they do make these little pads that you can use and it will be a lot faster, but I didn't want to go inside and get it. I already had my brush out here ready to go, so that's what I did. So the good thing is with water-based stains, if you see it starting to dry out, you can apply more stain over it. You can mist water over it and then kind of brush over it to rework it. So it's doable, but I will say that water-based stain does take a little bit more practice and getting used to than oil-based stains. For example, I have already covered the entire top surface with stain, but I am going back over it with more stain to ensure that it does not dry out before I am able to get my cloth and wipe it back. To remove this stain, I am using just paper towels to wipe it back. So I know a lot of different refinishers prefer different things, microfiber, terry cloths. I like paper towels. That's just easier for me. So I'm just wiping it back in even strokes, making sure I'm getting as much of the excess off as I can. Then I'm going to go back over it with fresh paper towels, making sure I do nice, even strokes, getting the stain off. And I'm going to make sure that I'm not leaving any streaks. So I'm going to go over it a few times. Next thing I want to do is make sure that these hinges really pop. Now I did remove them and clean them, but they just didn't come back to life the way I was hoping. So what I'm doing instead is I taped around the hinges to make sure I don't get anything on the wood. And then I grabbed some rub and buff and a paintbrush, and I'm applying the rub and buff all around the hinges. This is basically a wax, like a gilding wax. And then you remove the tape and you have a beautiful hinge. I did forget to film a few of the steps in here, including me top coating, but I swear I did. Now, before I show you the full reveal, let's go back and look at where we started. Okay, now that your memory has been refreshed, let's take a look at how she turned out. I could not be happier with how this piece turned out. She's ready for the next 100 years and to be passed down to future generations in this family. Make sure to comment down below any feedback you may have. I would love to hear from you. Let me know if you loved it, if you hated it, if you want to know more details on the products. I do have all products listed down in the description for this video, so make sure you check that out. There also is a discount code in there for Surf Prep. And of course, make sure to like and subscribe to this channel so that you can check out all of my future refinishing and restoration projects.